You're watching and listening to the Indy Drills podcast where we talk defensive back play. What are we doing in the secondary? That's what we're talking about each and every time here on Indy Drills. Glad you guys could join me here. Got some things that we need to get to today. Obviously, what's in the news, and that's going to be the NFL draft that recently came through. How did the DBs do? A little bit of talk on that. Also, to talk about soft press versus hard press. It's one of those things that DB coaches and defensive coordinators like to debate. I'm going to shed some light on that topic here. I got a question from the mailbag, pretty interesting one about being a defensive coordinator, a little piece, a little element of that. So I'm going to discuss that here. Also, my take on the big stir that Austin Rivers has caused with his talk about how many guys in the NBA can just go hop in there and play in the NFL. I'm going to be the next person that jumps in and gives his opinion on that. And then our main topic here is playing zone as a cornerback. All right. So we got a lot to get to here in the show. And of course, this show is sponsored by 101 DB Tips. Yes, it's the book that I wrote. I'm really just trying to get this in everyone's hand who plays, coaches, or trains defensive backs. I believe that much in this. And you know what? It's gotten critically acclaimed. I'm hard pressed to find someone who's had his book that hasn't really enjoyed it and gotten a whole lot out of it. So if you have not picked up your copy of it yet, hit the link in the description or just go to 101dbtips.com, grab your copy. It's going to change what you're doing. Again, whether you're a player, trainer, or a coach, a lot has gone into this, a lot of experience, a lot of trial and error, a lot of things that have worked for me and things that I've had to develop over time. So a good amount of time and experience put into that. I would have loved to have had a book like this either when I first started out playing defensive back or when I first started coaching. This would have been gold for me. And even that much more, I feel like I could have accomplished if I had something like this. So you have the ability to do that. Go ahead and check that out. So let's jump into the news here. The NFL draft. There were some concerning things. I discussed it on my other podcast that I do with Abel Calamino on the Two Chubs Football Podcast. I dug into that myself. He and I talked about it. You know, there were 15, I believe, 14, 15 players chosen. Then the first 14, 15 guys were offensive players. And, that just highlights what it is right now. It's an offensive league. That much has been made clear both by the rules that have been devised over the last few years by the NFL and their rules committee, as well as just the play. There's been much more of an emphasis on offense and throwing the football. There have been major advancements year over year over the last decade plus in that area of the game. And the league has fostered it by making it more difficult to defend wide receivers, harder to hit the quarterback, and harder to hit receivers coming across the middle. How do you feel about those rules coming into play? Really is irrelevant because there's nothing you really can do to stop that unless, there's going to be a fan-wide, I don't want to, not ban's not the word I'm looking for. Boycott's the word. Unless you're just going to boycott the NFL and college football, who tends to follow the NFL. Unless you plan on doing that, there's really nothing that you're going to be able to do to stop it. And quite frankly, there are a bunch of people that the NFL is trying to reach out to. They're trying to grab a certain audience that would not necessarily be NFL fans and bring them into the game. And the only way really to do that is because it is to make the game more exciting from their standpoint. And as I've always said, 10 to 7 games aren't going to really hold fans who really want to be on Netflix or they want to really be on doors or they want to be watching Bravo channel. That stuff's not going to excite them. Okay. So they need 35 to 31. They need 41 to 31 touchdowns or drama. And so they're trying to attract those folks. So even if the football purists and those folks who really love defense were to say, hey, we're not going to watch this anymore, the NFL would still survive because they would just bring in more of those folks who are not hardcore fans, but just want to see something exciting happening on the field. So whatever the case may be there. What is coming along with this, all right, and we noticed this in the offseason when the NFL went about, when teams went about releasing safeties left and right. If you guys remember, guys like Justin Simmons and Kevin Byard in Philadelphia got released. It was seemingly a trend. It kind of looked like what started happening with running backs several years ago, where they just their their importance got diluted. And I think a big part of that is not only because of what's happening, everyone wants offense and they're trying to devote their salary caps in the NFL to offense. They're giving the quarterback damn near 20% of the salary cap. They got to pay a left tackle. They're paying for offensive line. They're paying wide receivers more than they're paying top cornerbacks. That's what I'm seeing right now. And um, not only that, it's just what I'm starting to see on defense is, for lack of a better term, it just looks like some of these defenses are giving up. They're saying, well, these rules are against us, so we don't want to be aggressive. We're not going to be a heavy man team. We're going to sit back in quarters and we're going to just lay off. We're going to keep everything in front of us. And when you do that, I think it limits the importance of the guys in the secondary. You start feeling like, as a team, we can kind of get anyone to play safety. We can kind of get anyone to play corner if all we're doing is just, we're going to backpedal and just keep the ball in front of us and not give anything big. If you're playing a little bit of man coverage, or you're doing a little bit of what the Legion of Boom did, you're playing a little cover three, you're forcing teams out of their run game, and now you get more one-on-one matchups. It requires a more skilled athlete, a better player, someone who is just by that reason it's going to be more valuable. So that's a little concern that I had. And then we come to the NFL draft, and in that first round, we only had 3 defensive backs taken. That's the lowest number of first-round drafted defensive backs since 2019. I don't know, that doesn't seem too long ago, but if you really think about it, that was 5 years ago. In the last 10 NFL drafts, this is only the second time that we've had only 3 guys taken. So there's 2019, 2024. And outside of that, we're usually somewhere around 6 to 7 defensive backs taken. And there's been a declining number over the last 3 years. 2022, 7 DBs taken. Last year, 4 DBs taken in the first round. And then now this year, we've got 3 defensive backs taken in the first round. Matter of fact, there was more of a push early part of I think the first DB taken was at 20, Quinyon Mitchell. I believe that's the number he went to the Philadelphia Eagles. So we went all the way to pick number 20 before we had a defensive back. There was once a time where DB might get taken at pick number 5. We had to go all the way down to pick number 20. And in fact, once that run on the offensive players stopped, the move now was to guys in the trenches, defensive tackles and edge rushers, because a lot of these defensive coordinators think that's the only place to really get an edge on defense. It's to pressure the quarterback, force him into some throws, or get sacks. I don't agree with this at all, as you would probably imagine. You still need highly skilled guys out on the edge. And in fact, the team that won the Super Bowl, the Kansas City Chiefs, this may sound bold, and this may disturb the ears of those who love offense and the fantasy geeks out there. But I would dare say the reason the Kansas City Chiefs got to and won a Super Bowl was because of what Steve Spagnuolo was doing on defense. His aggressive nature, his willingness to blitz. Someone as dangerous as a Lamar Jackson in that AFC Championship game, I really think was the impetus in getting them to that Super Bowl. If they had laid back, I think, in zone, they probably would have lost that game. It was his ability and his boldness in going out and blitzing at different times in big games during the year that really spurred on the Chiefs. Because look, for most of this year, the Chiefs struggled offensively. Yes, they turned things up in the playoffs as good teams, as dynasty teams would do. But they were in that position that they were in going into the playoffs because of that defense. And then you know what? Whether you guys remember this or not, maybe you're looking at the final score of the Super Bowl, but that was a defensive football game. We did go into overtime, and there were a couple of scores there. That was a defensive football game. And at least from the Chiefs' standpoint, the reason they were able to be in that game like that was because of the aggressive nature, the blitzing, and all of the confusion and the coverage they had in that secondary. You start thinking about the guys that were in that secondary. McDuffie, who had a really great Super Bowl. And then there was L'Jarius Sneed, who was great all season long. Just the entire secondary for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I know it's a copycat league, and if people think that, we're just going to do what everyone else is doing, sit back in these in these quarter coverages and variations of quarters, which, the mentality really is lay off, keep everything in front of you, don't give up a big play. We're not taking very many chances. Well, then I think we're going to start seeing a number of teams wrongfully so devaluing the position of safety and cornerback and just the secondary in general. So that's just something for us to keep our eye on. Me personally, if I'm a defensive coordinator, either at the college or the NFL level, I'm going to make sure I've got defensive backs developed. Obviously, that's my area of expertise, but I just can't imagine a world where I have to just sit back all day and allow teams to complete passes and hope they make mistakes. I couldn't be doing that week in, week out. Maybe there are a few opponents throughout the year where you're worried about how dangerous they are and you don't necessarily feel like you might match up in the secondary. That's not a situation I often would find myself in. I just would make it a point to be able to cover. But let's say I run into a couple of those teams, then maybe I do. I'm more quarters, which is not really my thing, but I might lay off a little bit more and play a little bit more zone that game. But say I'm going to go in, week out, and this is what I do, and just allow teams to hold the football and move down the field. That might be okay for you in the regular season, but when you get into your postseason, when you're at high school, college, or pro, you're going to run into highly efficient offenses. That's part of the reason why they got that far. That's part of the reason why they're in the playoffs. And yes, they will complete 10, 11, 12 play drives on you. If you are not in a position to do anything about that, to force their hand, to get them behind the sticks, to force some mistakes and some errors, some fumbles, some sacks, some interceptions, then you're going to probably never really get to where you want to go. I just can't see teams being passive in any way, shape, or form in football and continuously being good. This game, even though there have been rule changes, is just not made for that. This is this game is just aggressive in nature. So again, something for us to keep our eyes on. Again, over the last 3 NFL drafts, we've seen a decline in first-round defensive backs. I don't have the total numbers in terms of how many guys have been taken. It probably isn't a big change throughout the entire 7 rounds of the draft. I just think it looks like these teams are putting less importance on that. So, yeah, they might have the same number of BBs drafted. They're just not drafting them as high. Looking back in 2019, that number of 3 in 2019 did follow a year where there was 6 the year before that and 8 before that. So maybe Chad is just overreacting a little bit, and this is just a natural cycle of things. We have a high number. There's less the next year, and then there's less the next year after that, and that kicks us to 3. Maybe it's because many of the teams are satisfied with what they've done in the previous years, and now we've just hit a low. Or maybe all of the offensive rules and changes have now, and along with the attitudes of defensive coordinators, has devalued the secondary position. It's also going to devalue secondary coaches as well. So just be on the lookout for that. Just something for us to think about. All right, I wanted to get into this talk really quick. It's about hard press versus soft press. Typically, with defensive backs and defensive back coaches, you're in one camp or you're in the other. You're either, my guys are going to hardcore hard press. This is what we're about. This is what we do, down in, down out. Or you're in the camp of, we're a soft press team. We want to keep things in front of us. And we, want to just kind of mirror routes and not give up the big play. You're usually in one camp or the other. And I'm here to say to you, both to the players as well as the coaches, you don't have to be firmly in one camp or the other. You don't have to be a far-right Republican. You don't have to be a far-left Democrat. You can be a moderate. And I'm here to tell you, in a lot of things in life right now, we need a lot more moderates than we need extremes. When it comes to both of these techniques, they have a time and place. I get it. Though I'm saying you don't need to be hardcore one or the other, you do have a base. So if your base is hardcore hard press, then that's going to be your technique the majority of the time. That's what you want your guys doing a majority of the time. However, there is a time and place for the other technique. Okay, case in point. If you're a guy that wants to press in quarters, okay, you want to play a little quarters press technique, I would not recommend, if you were the player or the coach, that you go hard press in quarters. If you're pressing in quarters, I would not recommend hard press. Why? Because listen, in that coverage, by and large, you need to be over the top of the three biggest routes on that tree: 7, 8, and 9. Okay, got to take away the go ball. Got to be ready for the post ball. Got to be in a great position because you may or may not get help from that safety on it. And be ready for a corner route if you know are switching routes off, etc. Whatever the case may be. The long ball is what you're trying to take away and press one way or another. And if you're pressed in quarters, and if you're pressing it, you're better off playing soft press. This is now when you want to mirror. If you're playing cover one, let's say, and it's, you're expecting a go ball, you're expecting something deep. Maybe you're pressing for some reason in 3rd and 10 or 11 or 3rd and 8 or something long, and you think you're going to get a deeper route. And that's a time maybe you do want to play soft press. On the flip side, you find yourself in a third and fourth situation, and as a DC and as a DB coach, you want your guys to press in that. If you're running around using that soft press technique, whether it's an inch or your motor and mirroring, it's going to be very hard for you guys because you're going to probably get a lot of slants. And I don't care how you teach this thing. Soft press versus slant is difficult. It's difficult for your guys. Maybe you say, hey, when I played, I was able to do it. That's great. I've already talked about at the beginning of this show how much this sport has evolved, especially offensively. Receivers are a lot more competent at the line of scrimmage, how to beat certain looks, stand press, how to get their releases. We see it all over the internet. So something you may have been able to do when you were playing in your playing days might be a little bit more difficult for a guy that's coming up now. All right. Being soft in your press technique in those situations where teams can run pretty good slant routes between the quarterback and the wide receiver could cause a problem for you in soft press, whether you're inching or you're, pedaling out of there and you're trying to motor mirror. If a corner keeps getting beat, a DB keeps getting beat on slant routes, now they're going to overplay that, and now that gives up something else. Now you're trying to give up the fade. And that's the whole thing you're supposed to be taking away, which is soft press technique. So it just causes a breakdown. So what I'm talking to you guys about here, the whole gist of what I'm talking about here is you want to try and be able to teach your guys both of those techniques. The other part of it is this. Not all DBs, not all corners, not all nickelbacks are built the same. Some guys are going to be shorter and have really, really great feet. For those guys, soft press technique is just going to be best for them. That's going to be their tool to win. It's probably not a good idea for a guy like that who might be 5'9" or 5'10" to be in a hard press situation and have his back turned versus a 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" wide receiver and have the ball coming in. That's just going to be constantly in a bad position. And he might be better off just using his feet to cut off routes and trying to keep everything underneath. Conversely, if you've got a 6'1", 6'2" guy, he should be using his hands. If you got him brand new and the first thing he's learning about playing a position is from you, I would beg you to have that guy use the tools that he has, which is most likely long arms. He's got a long reach, long body. He's long. That's the whole reason for him to be playing cornerback and playing press. Teach that guy how to play hard press and widen the releases of these wide receivers and waste a little time at the line of scrimmage. He just might be better at that. His feet probably aren't as quick because that's just biology. That's just physiology. Whatever you want to say. He has longer limbs. They don't move as fast as a guy that's 5'9", 5'8", whatever the case may be. So even for those reasons now, you would want to have your guys learn different techniques. And if you're really schooled as a coach, experienced as a coach, and also confident as a coach, you would teach both of those and tell the guys, use what you do best. Here's the coverage. Here's what we need done. Use what it is that works best for you. And you want to be, as a coach, proficient in both so that when a guy's technique breaks down in hard press or a guy's technique breaks down in soft press, you can offer them some guidance. You can bring them back to the base point. You can fix what's going wrong. You don't want to be the coach that's mechanic that only works on American cars. Because what happens if you get a couple BMWs and some Volvos into your shop? You're going to turn down that money? You're going to send it off? You want to be able to work on all kinds of cars. Yes, your specialty is American cars. But if a BMW comes in there or a Volvo or an Audi comes in, you want to be able to service that car. So as a coach, you guys go to clinics every year, you acquire information from all kinds of sources. I would recommend to you, and I'm saying this both now to the players and the coaches, don't go all in on just that one technique. Okay. You can pick the one you like more, that you feel more comfortable with, and maybe you start off 80-20. 80% of the information I'm going out and seeking and getting is going to be on hard press. But I'm going to spend a little bit of time, 20% of my time, on soft press, and at least learning that and having that at my disposal. Okay. And, I'm both players and coaches. Let's do that, because there may come a time where you need it. There may be a time where hard pressing the guy that you're in front of all night is just not working for you. And you can pull out this other weapon and say, all right, I can hit a few soft presses on this guy, at least just to throw him off. Because using that one technique for an entire game is like running the same coverage for an entire game. So for my defensive coordinators that are listening to me, what if your head coach came to you and said, hey, listen, you are only going to run cover 2 tonight. It's cover 2 and cover 2 only. Care about whatever else it is you think you want to run, whatever it is else you think you might be good at, whatever coverage you think your unit might play better. Tonight, you're going to run cover 2 and cover 2 only. Think about if he did that to you. How would you feel? I don't think you would feel very good. So I'm going to caution the coaches out there that are listening to this against pigeonholing your guys specifically into this one technique. Yes, have a base. You might be a cover 1 team. You might be a cover 3 team. Every now and then, you might have some situations where you need to run that cover 2. Same thing with that technique. There's some situations where you might want to be a hard press guy, but your core is soft press. And then you have different guys in there. They're built differently. You go watch a baseball game, not every guy that steps in that batter's box has the same stance. Okay? There's athletes are different, and they have different areas of comfortability. That is a function of their size, a function of their strength, and a function of their experiences as they entered into the game and came up to the point where they reached you. So I'm going to wrap this up in a bow and say, do yourself a favor as both a player as well as a coach, and devote some time to both of these techniques. You can lean heavy to one or the other, devote a little bit of time. As a player, you will enjoy being able to use different techniques in different times. And as a coach, you will get more out of your players. It would suck for you to have a really, really good player standing next to you on the sideline because he's not very good at this one technique that you're trying to force him to play. You know, in this day and age, what happens anyway? That really good player is going to take off and go somewhere else. And, it would not make you feel very good if he goes somewhere else and he flourishes there when you had a chance to have him here, and simply because you were forcing him into this one particular technique that, he couldn't play on Friday nights or Saturdays or even Sundays. It would probably be in your best interest to try and sprinkle a little bit of both on players. And I get it as a coach. Sometimes you don't want to have these guys doing too much and then you lose control of your unit. Now they're out there doing all kinds of stuff and they get too far away. Have control of your unit while also not pigeonholing them into this one thing to where now they're robots. That's just not what you want to have out there. That's just not going to be a really, really good situation for you there. All right, moving on to the next thing. I always have a mailbag, and guys send me questions, and every now and then I'll pull one out of there. If you guys do want to reach me with a question, feel free to send one cwilson@alliesdbcamp.com, and I may bring it up on the next Indy Drills podcast. All right. Watson from El Paso, Texas asked me this question. I'm not reading it. I don't have it here in front of me, but he asked me if I use call sheets. Do I have any of the call sheets that I used back when I was a defensive coordinator? Oddly enough, I did not. I was coaching at the high school level. Did not have a play call sheet. Why didn't I have one? Now, first of all, yes, I had a sheet that I used. I had defenses that I had on a sheet that I was looking at for the week. But when I went into games, I did not have a call sheet. I did not want to, I'm going to use this word again, pigeonhole myself into calls that I had on a sheet. Because you guys know this. If you're a defensive coordinator out there, you've had a chance to run anything. on a game. Offense or defense, you guys know what I'm talking about. Now, offensively, yes, you got to have a play call sheet. I'm not here to talk about that. You need that call sheet offensively. Defensively. The game rarely ever goes exactly the way that you thought it would go. So yes, you could plan out, you could have a sheet right here, and you say in 3rd and 7, we're going to do this, etc., etc. If I get a 3rd and 5 situation, here's the 3 calls that I'm going to make. I started off using play call sheets when I first was a defense coordinator, and I found that I was handcuffing myself a little bit. Because in those moments, things are moving fast, especially if the team's doing hurry up. And I look on that sheet and I see 3 calls that I put down. I might have put them there on Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever the case may be. And because things are moving so fast, these are the only 3 things in my mind that I would consider. And there were a lot of times I'd get out of the game, I watch the film, I start replaying in my mind, and I said, oh man, in that 3rd and 5 situation, I could have used this. This might have really helped us right here. But it wasn't on my sheet. Therefore, I did not consider it. Now, I will say this. I totally understand my defense. It's my creation. Obviously, I didn't create all the coverages, but the little tweaks to it. I was kind of unique in my fronts, and some of the blitzes that I use, I did have some unique coverages. And it was my defense, basically. So I totally and completely understood it. So it made it a little easier for me to be out on that field in those situations and call something because I have a complete understanding of it. So by saying that, I'm saying, listen, whether you learned your defense from someone else or you learned it from a clinic or, it was a system that was in place, with a coordinator that was there before you, whatever, do yourself a favor. Have a total understanding of it to the point where you could be out there and call it without a call sheet. You could pull a call out from anywhere, a front, a blitz, a coverage, whatever the case may be. So, and then now that's going to make things flow a little bit easier for you. And now you have the chance to be unpredictable at certain times in the game. Like the soft press and hard press technique that I just had, once you have that call sheet, first of all, I know a lot of guys out here are going to want to keep that call sheet short. You're not trying to have the big Waffle House menu that you see offensive guys like Andy Reid out there with that folds, opens. You got 100 things and it's literally small type on there, and you've got a 50 million calls. If you wanted that, you would have been an offensive coordinator. You don't want that. So if you're trying to reduce your sheet down, what's going to happen to you is what I mentioned earlier. You're only going to have a handful of calls for each situation, and you're going to be pigeonholed into that. Now, it sounds like I'm advocating against never having a play call sheet. It's not exactly what I'm doing. If you need it, you need it. If it works for you, it works. After all, the question was that I use a play call sheet. And for the majority of the time as a defensive coordinator, I did not use one. And I'm just merely telling you guys the reasons why I did not. Something for you to consider. If you want to be, I think not using the call sheet makes you a little less predictable, makes you more unpredictable. You can kind of pull things out of nowhere because you got to understand the teams, your opponents that are going against you have scouting you and they've been watching you. And here's another thing. That call sheet's going to stay the same a lot of times. You get comfortable as a coach. So some of those calls that you had in certain situations are going to stay on there week after week after week. And you are being scouted by your opponent, and they can start getting a really good idea of everything that you're going to call in certain situations. And if you're using that sheet, they can be rest assured that one of those calls are coming and they can plot against you. So I guess I am advocating against using the play call sheet if you're a defensive coordinator. You're probably better off just really totally understanding your defense. And maybe you have that play call sheet just as a reference. There was a time I went from using that play call sheet during the game to just having a list of my defenses in my hand, and I would review them in between series. I was not looking at them from play to play, but I might, when the guys came off the field, think about some things that happened and look at the sheet just as a reference guide as to some things I might be able to pull out to effectively change some of what I saw in the series that just happened or a series before. I did that to just, I didn't even keep the play sheet those last few years that I was coaching. So that part was experience. If you're a new guy that's out, you're going to have that sheet in your hand. I'm not I can't push you away from that. That's just going to be your comfort zone. But it should be your aim to understand that defense well enough to not have a play call sheet at all, even if you're going to use it. So you could do this if you guys are having scrimmages, and you should be having scrimmages in your practices, college, high school, at all levels. We have scrimmages. Try to understand the defense to the point where you can go into one of those scrimmages and try going into the scrimmages and not having a play sheet. That's going to give you an idea as to how well you really understand the defense that you're running. Maybe you still want to keep the play call sheet on game day, but a true test of how well you understand and know those defenses would be you being out there in a scrimmage situation, or even just in an extended team or 7-on-7 situation, and you don't have a play sheet with you at all, and see how well you could function. If you can't function at all, you really need to dig in a little deeper into how your defense works and understand it totally. And that's just going to help you as a coach in making calls and being able to combat what the offense is bringing at you each and every week. So, that's my thoughts on that. Sliding on to our next topic right here, Austin Rivers. I don't know if you guys know who he is by now. A man of many teams in the league, son of Doc Rivers, with the Los Angeles Lakers. Went on a podcast, and podcasts are really great for getting these sound bites, and this one really stirred up the nest. He said there's about 30 players in the NBA that could jump over and go play in the NFL right now, and he doesn't think there are any players in the NFL that could go step onto an NBA court and make any kind of an impact. Obviously, all the guys on the football side are rejecting that wholeheartedly. I have not seen a ton of NBA players coming to back Austin Rivers up on this. So my whole point on it is this. There are obviously great athletes in the NBA. They're obviously, from an athletic standpoint, guys who could fit the bill. They could probably go to the combine and maybe impress coaches enough to say that they might want to draft this guy. But for any NBA guy or anyone who supports this argument, and it's really been fans of the NBA or, I guess basketball player types who want to, make themselves out to be something huge and great that are supporting this, you guys maybe know or don't know this. Football players know this. You can't deny the physical element of the game and it being a part of the success. So despite everything that I've said about rule changes and trying to make the game safer and not trying to, make the game so violent, it's still a violent game. It's still a collision sport. And let's be honest, a lot of those guys in the NBA played football at some point in their life, and they made a business decision to go pursue basketball because of the violence involved in football. Just didn't like getting hit. There have been guys on record that have said that. Charles Barkley, who's as physical a player that has ever been in the NBA, even said he went out for football, got hit a few times, and said, "No, I'm good. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go pursue this whole basketball thing." And that's been the case for a bunch of these guys in the NBA. Kudos to Austin Rivers for becoming relevant through this podcast, because it's not going to be anything off of what he's done on a basketball court. And I guess that's me taking a shot, but that's just the truth. He does not stand out on an NBA basketball court amongst guys that are tops in this game. He just, he does play for the Lakers. He played for the New Orleans Hornets, or he played for the Atlanta Hawks. We probably would never mention this guy. So he's on the Lakers. He's getting mentioned. He's 9 points a game, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. He's not at the top of his game. So kudos to him for being able to do something to be relevant, at least for this entire last 5-6 days. But I'm not supporting that. Yes, there are athletic guys in the NBA that can fit what athletic guys in the NFL look like. But between training camps and the sun and the constant contact and all of the grueling measures you got to go through just to get on that football field, and actually get on the football field on a Sunday and experience the hitting that's going on. Whether you are a tight end that's getting whacked across the middle by linebackers or safeties, or anyone that's coming down, or you double back and a defensive lineman spins around and crushes you. Like, you see what these NBA players do when they get fouled. I mean, just think of Anthony Davis in the last playoff series. How many of these guys do you think could catch a pass out on the perimeter, try to duck back through the middle of the field, and get hit by a defensive tackle that's running to the football and get really just racked and still want to play this game? Not very many. So there is a mental element between the game of basketball and the game of football that you either have or don't have. And I find it hard to believe that there are 30 guys in the NBA that have that. I would say maybe 5 or 6. Maybe Anthony Edwards, who was a pretty damn good high school football player, might be able to deal with that. But if a guy has already played in the NBA and has made a salary in the NBA and has experienced what he can do in the NBA financially and what it takes versus going on a football field and experiencing that, he's going to want to go back to that NBA 10 times out of 10. I'll tell you, NFL players, if they were to jump into the NBA and make an NBA salary and get treated the way players in the NBA make, would probably a good amount of them want to sit on the edge of that bench over going to play in the NFL. Now, you do have some nuts that just love the contact. They would probably play this game for free just so that they can, for 2 and 3 hours each and every week, knock the hell out of someone and not do any prison time for it. You'd have those kind of guys. But the reverse is true. The NBA players, in terms of contracts and everything else, just how they are, how their life is as an NBA player is a whole lot better, for lack of a better term, than what's going on in the NFL. And so a lot of those NFL players would just take that. I can't see NBA players playing in the NBA, coming over into the NFL, experiencing an NFL training camp, and then a couple of Sundays of contact. Whether you are on offense getting hit because you had the ball in your hand, or you're on defense and having to tackle a Derrick Henry or even an A.J. Brown out on the edge and enjoy that contact, combined with the pay and say, hey, give me this over the NBA every day of the week. And so there is a mental component to this that has to be considered. And there aren't 30 guys in the NBA that are going to roll with that. That's just not going to happen. So that is my thoughts on that right there. All right, sliding on to our main topic here, talking about cornerbacks playing zone. Okay. And basically, I'm just going to break down. This is really for players, but coaches, you can take something in this as well. I'm going to give some keys to playing zone defense the right way. And I'm talking especially to cornerbacks, but this is for everyone in it. I think if you ask most cornerbacks whether they prefer to play man coverage or zone coverage, they're going to say they want to play man coverage. There are a number of reasons for this. One is because they think it shows their worth more at the position if they're playing man coverage. Second, it's because zones can get confusing. Like, think of all the rules that are involved. It requires a little more discipline than playing in man coverage. Cornerbacks love to just go up there and say, like, hey, that's my guy, and I've got him no matter what on this play. Intelligent corners, though, all right, I'm not taking any shots. You think this way, you still got time to adjust it. Intelligent corners don't think this way. They know that zone coverage is necessary, and it provides a pretty big payoff for you if you know how to run it. Now, when you're in Little League and high school and you're athletic, there's temptation for coaches to just have a guy do what's best at the moment. I think at those levels, you're really just trying to teach your guys the game. Yes, you want to win. I know egos get involved as coaches. But at those younger ages, you're really trying to teach guys the game, right? So a lot of coaches fall into, let's just use our superiority, your athletic prowess, and win in man coverage. What gets lost a lot of times, though, is that, you are at that level. You're trying to teach a young athlete the game so that he can survive moving down the road as a player. Unfortunately, that desire for some and the pressure to win, I know what it's like to coach at the youth level. That's how I started off coaching. It leads guys to do only what's necessary to win the game. And then, that hurts the long-term development of the player. As a result of what I have just told you guys, the young player grows up, I've seen this time and again, into a mature player that struggles with the little intricacies of zone, all of the rules that are involved and the discipline of it. And, the biggest issue that comes out of understanding the coverage is having the discipline to play it and cover their zone, all right? Sometimes it gets hard to have the patience to deal with guys in that situation. when offenses are applying on secondary members by running routes in front of them and taking a player out of one zone and running him off into another, being where these young guys need to be can be very, very difficult. Athletes who struggle in zone have one or two major things happening to them. One is they don't totally understand the coverage, or they don't understand what it is the offense is trying to do to them. If you want to be more effective in zone coverage, then you got to be, first of all, willing to play zone. However, as a coach, if you're not willing to run zone, because your players are not disciplined, and you guys are just not going to get better at it. And if you say as a player you don't like it and you don't want to run the zone coverages, at some point you're going to run in the zone coverage, man, and another guy's going to play over you because he understands. So the first thing you've got to do, if you got to understand when you're playing zone coverages, is that you're now covering with your mouth, all right? Whereas in man coverage, it's all about your feet and your hands. Zone coverage forces communication into the equation in a big way. When a player leaves your zone, you must resist your tendencies, which is to chase and activate your zone intelligence, which involves you telling your teammate that a guy is coming. That's where the in and the out calls come from, if you've had a coach talk to you about that. Learning to communicate is a big key to excelling at zone. The next thing you have to do is totally understand the zone coverage. Of course, you're going to know what your job is. You better, or I assume your coach won't have you out there. However, understanding who has the surrounding zones near you will prevent you from being tempted to move in a zone that's not yours. Remember, I tell you, the offense tries to bait you by having guys run in front of your face and see if you'll bite the cheese, take the candy. Understand that the linebacker has the flat when you have the deep third, if that's the case in the zone that you're running. If you understand that, it'll make you much less likely to go jump around in that flat and instead call it out to the linebacker because you know that's the guy that's supposed to be there. Finally, knowing what the offense is trying to do will allow you to plan ahead as the routes unfold. Being able to plan ahead gives you the anticipation you need to remain in your zone. Knowing that a team likes to run a seam route by the slot wide receiver and have the outside receiver run a dig will keep you from chasing the dig when you should be helping on the seam. Knowing that the route combo is coming will do wonders to keep you out of a zone that does not belong to you and belongs to someone else. It's going to keep you in your zone that you're supposed to be in, and man, that's how plays just seem to come your way. If you are struggling with your zone coverage, try taking care of the three things that I just mentioned and described. First of all, know where you're supposed to be. Second, know who has the routes, the areas around you. Understand totally the zone defense that you're running. And then finally, you got to understand how offenses attack you. So there's a lot of studying involved there. And I know as a young player, you don't really care for all the studying stuff. Some of you don't. Just reminds you too much of school. But hey, there's intelligence involved in this. And the guys with the bigger IQs are the guys that last longer, that make more plays, that continue to move up and up and up. So embrace that part of this game. Understand your job, obviously. And understand that you are covering with your mouth primarily in a zone. Understand who has the surrounding zones around you. And also maybe understand a certain area of the field that you guys are just willing to leave open, because there's only 11 of you out there. In a lot of these zones, in some areas, you're just not going to be able to cover. And instead, you're going to rally into those zones. All right. So sometimes in a cover three, you might be leaving a flat open. You should understand that. And that you're just going to rally to it. And by rally, I mean only when the ball is thrown or the throw is eminent to that area would you go and attack it. Any player. If you have a cover three where, as a corner you're deep, the linebacker is going to be in the curl and we're just going to leave the flat and invite them to throw it to the flat because we're going to rally there, then maybe you don't go jump that hitch route. Maybe you don't go jump on a quick out by the number 2 wide receiver and go jump down in that flat, and then there's a corner route that comes out there behind you, or whatever the case may be. Understanding certain zones that are going to be left open really will help you in not hesitate. And sometimes that's all the offense needs. It's just for you to stop your feet for a second to get a throw in and complete it and move down. All right. Hope you guys took something out of that. And if you were one of these man corners, and we've got a ton of them down here in South Florida, that's all you guys love to play. Man, not only man, you love to play press. I hope you got a couple of things out of this. You want to be better in your zone coverages because you're going to go off to college and you're going to have zones in college. As a matter of fact, a lot of these colleges are going to run more zone than they run man. So 60, 70% of the game is going to be some kind of zone. And if you're not good in zone, can I really put you out on the field as a coach and say, man, for 70% of the scene, this guy might be wrong? There's no way as a coach you're going to feel comfortable doing that. And so you're going to limit your chance to play. All right. So understand those three things, take a note of it, and get better. Make it a point of getting better at those things right now. You're watching this as soon as we're in the off season right now. You have time. Go get better at your zone coverage. You're gonna, be more impressive on the field, both to the coaches, to yourself, and any scouts. If you're a young guy looking to go to college or something like that, you're gonna be more impressive to everyone that is watching. All right, that's the time on the Indy Drills podcast. I hope you guys had a really fun time in here and that you learned something. Feel free to drop some comments if you happen to be watching this on YouTube. I'm just newly brought the Indy Drills podcast. This is, I think, only the third episode that I'm putting up on YouTube right now. So feel free to drop your comments down there. Would really appreciate the feedback right there. You can always send me an email with your questions or comments to cwilson@alliancedbcamp.com. If you're listening to this on your streaming device, whether that is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever you use to stream your podcast, you can, if they have the ability to do so, leave a message right there. I think you can do that on Podcasters. You can leave it right there in the app, or again, send me an email to cwilson@alliancedbcamp.com. Please take a moment, if you have not done so already, or if this is your first time listening in, to subscribe to the show, whether you're on YouTube or streaming this again on one of your podcast streamers. Subscribe to the show, give this a like and a thumbs up, and make sure you don't miss another one of these great shows. That's it for me. I'm out. And until next time, all eyes DB Camp. Consistency breeds results.